There's a story, a chilling one, that I've heard from an old friend only that made me question the very fabric of reality. It's a story that, despite being years old, still haunts me to this day. It happened in a small town, one that didn't show up on many maps, a place so quiet and obscure that few would care to remember it, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else, where your neighbors are the only friends you'll ever need, but it's also a place where secrets fester in the silence, and the truth is often buried under layers of whispered lies. It was a foggy autumn evening when David first moved into the house on the edge of town, a modest two-story home, nestled at the edge of a dark forest, with a view of a cemetery down the hill, the kind of house you might expect to be lonely, cold, and a little forgotten. David, a successful but solitary man, had recently gotten a promotion that relocated him to the town. He wasn't particularly social, so the isolation didn't bother him. The town was far enough from the city to provide some quiet after his long workdays, and he welcomed the solitude. On his first night in the house, he settled in with a cup of tea by the window, watching the mist roll in. The wind outside howled, and the branches of the trees scraped against the windowsill. As the clock struck midnight, he heard a soft knock on the door. David wasn't expecting anyone. The neighborhood was quiet, and he hadn't yet had a chance to introduce himself to anyone. Hesitant but curious, he opened the door, only to find no one standing on the porch, but there was something on the ground, an old, faded envelope. He picked it up, puzzled. The envelope was unmarked, with no return address, no indication of who could have left it. He opened it carefully, and inside was a single piece of yellowed paper, with a message written in hurried, almost desperate handwriting. The visitor will come at midnight. You cannot stop him. He is already inside. David's first thought was that this was some sort of prank, a neighbor trying to spook the new guy. He laughed it off and went back inside, locking the door behind him. But as he walked to the living room, he noticed something strange. The temperature in the room had dropped significantly, and a cold draft seemed to swirl around him, coming from nowhere. He checked the windows. They were all closed tight, but that chill persisted. And then, in the corner of his eye, he saw it. A shadow. At first, it was subtle, a flicker in the corner of the room. He turned quickly, but nothing was there. He tried to ignore it, but every time he turned away, the shadow grew more distinct. It was moving, slowly, creeping across the floor towards him. Panic began to rise in his chest. He stepped back, his heart racing. The shadow seemed to grow, stretching unnaturally long, its shape becoming more defined, until it was unmistakable. A figure, a tall, hunched man, draped in dark, tattered clothing. David's breath caught in his throat. He could hear the sound of soft, shuffling footsteps, like the man was dragging himself across the floor. The air grew thick, suffocating, as though the very room was closing in on him. Without thinking, David bolted from the room, his mind scrambling for an explanation. Maybe it was a dream, he thought. Maybe he was just tired. He ran upstairs to his bedroom, locked the door, and collapsed onto the bed, trembling. But as he lay there, trying to shake the terror that gripped him, he heard something else, a faint whisper, soft at first, then louder, closer. I've been waiting. The voice came from right beside his ear, as though someone was standing next to him in the darkness. He shot up, heart pounding in his chest. The room was empty, but there, on the floor by the door, was a single footprint, fresh, wet, as if someone had stepped inside just moments ago. David didn't dare move. He could hear the breath of the figure now, ragged and slow, just beyond the door. He felt the cold, the unmistakable presence of something wrong. The figure spoke again, its voice low and hoarse. You can't leave. You've invited me in. David didn't remember how he managed to escape. He didn't remember running out into the night, the icy wind biting at his skin. He only remembered the sensation of something cold, something ancient, gripping his ankle just before he reached the door. It's been years since that night, and David never returned to that house. The town forgot about him as quietly as it had forgotten the others before him. But there's something that the villagers know, something that's been passed down through hushed whispers. You see, the house David moved into wasn't abandoned. It was always waiting, and now, someone new is bound to take his place. They say you can still hear the knocks at midnight. And if you listen closely enough, you might just hear the whisper. The visitor is already inside.